They say a good marriage is built on trust, communication, and shared passwords. My wife and I had all three until I realized she'd changed two of them without telling me. The third? Well, that one she broke in half like a stale breadstick. It started like any normal Thursday. You know, the kind, smooth coffee, a predictable drive to work, and the kind of mild weather that makes you question whether Mother Nature is buttering you up for something. I'm a structural engineer. We don't do excitement. Our thrill is getting a beam-to-bolt connection rated correctly. My adrenaline rush comes from watching a wall resist lateral load. That morning, I left the house at 7:03, kissed her on the cheek like always, and she smiled the same way she had for years, sweet, sleepy, a little distant. Looking back now, I should have known. That smile had less warmth than a vending machine burrito. At work, everything was on autopilot. My mind was on a bid I was closing, not on the slow-brewed disaster simmering back home. By 4 p.m., I was heading home to leftovers and a rerun of The Wire I'd somehow never seen. I pulled into our driveway, took note of the same old neighborhood sounds, the sprinkler next door, the distant bark of the annoying schnauzer across the street. But something was off. The Wi-Fi didn't connect automatically. Harmless at first, right? Could be a power cycle. Could be nothing. But my gut, trained over years of perfectly predictable suburban life, told me something was wobbling. I asked my wife, Joanna, and she brushed it off with a laugh that sounded a bit too rehearsed. Oh, probably just the modem. I'll reset it in the morning. She never touched the modem. I did. It was our unspoken deal. She didn't do tech, and I didn't do decorative pillows. We respected the lines. So that night, instead of watching TV, I sat with a bourbon and started mentally cataloging little things I'd ignored for months. The overnight trips for client meetings. The way she suddenly took up yoga but never came home with sweat. The text she got last week and silenced with a swift face-down flip of her phone like it was radioactive. Still, I didn't accuse. No yelling, no confrontation. That's not how I operate. I started planning. I didn't know the full scope yet. But something was off, and I was going to find it. Slowly. Methodically. Like pulling threads from a cheap sweater until the whole thing unraveled in your hands. This was the calm before the storm. And oh, the storm was going to be biblical. Joanna once told me I was too calm. Said she sometimes wished I'd lose it, just once, so she could feel like I really cared. I always thought that was a strange wish. That kind of thing doesn't age well in a marriage. One day you're throwing your car keys across the room to show passion. The next you're in court explaining why there's a dent in the drywall next to the wine rack. Me? I prefer control. So when suspicion tightened its grip around my neck, I didn't rage. I didn't accuse. I just bought a burner phone and hired a private investigator named Dennis. Dennis looked like every before photo in a gym membership ad. But he was sharp. Ex-military. Ex-cop. Ex-husband. The kind of guy who knew exactly where to plant a microphone and how to disappear into a parking lot like smoke. He took the job with a look that said, "You're not the first guy whose wife is playing out of bounds." I gave him a simple brief. I don't want drama. I want facts. Quiet ones. While Dennis got to work, I started playing my own game of chess. Small things. Strategic moves. I changed the passwords to our joint savings and moved most of the liquid cash to an account only I could access. Nothing illegal. Nothing she could call foul on. Just a little financial self-care. Then came the ring. She'd stopped wearing it. Not every day, just often enough that it felt deliberate. I asked about it once. She said, "It's getting too loose." I don't want to lose it. A sweet lie wrapped in logic. She could have had it resized at any jeweler in town. Hell, I would have paid for it gladly. But she didn't. She just left it on the counter like it didn't mean anything anymore. That's when I knew. I didn't just suspect. I knew. So I played dumb. Kept my smile on straight. Let her think the fog was still thick. I kissed her goodnight. I sent her flowers at work. I even booked us a weekend in Vermont we'd never take, just to throw her sin off the trail. And all the while, Dennis fed me breadcrumbs. A suspicious dinner here. A text to a number saved as Angela that belonged to a man named Darren. Receipts. Photos. Patterns. The pieces were slow to come together, but when they did, they formed something unmistakable. She was having an affair. And I wasn't going to stop it. I was going to let her dig her own grave. Because revenge? That's not something you rush. It's something you perfect. It was a Wednesday. Funny how the day your life shifts forever can start out with something as mundane as burnt toast and a traffic jam. Dennis called me at 6:43 a.m. "Got something you'll want to see in person," he said. "Tonight." Usual spot. Dennis doesn't do theater. If he says, "You'll want to see it," that means it's the kind of thing that makes your blood turn to ice, then steam. I sat through 8 hours of meetings that day like a man hosting a dinner party while termites ate the floorboards. I nodded. I smiled. I approved a beam redesign for a parking garage that, ironically, was more structurally sound than my marriage. At 7:15 p.m., I pulled into the back corner of a rundown diner parking lot, right next to Dennis' silver Chevy that still had dents from a fender bender he didn't feel like explaining. He was already in the booth inside, sipping black coffee like he was auditioning for a noir film. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Classic move. I opened it, already bracing myself. Inside were 12 glossy photos and a USB drive. The first image? Joanna, my wife, at a bar, smiling in that way you only do when you're on a date and think no one's watching. The man? Mid-40s. Clean cut. Too much cologne, probably. Button-up shirt 2 sizes too tight. His hand rested on hers like it belonged there. The next few photos? Them leaving together. Then a different day. Her car parked outside a townhouse Dennis had staked out. And then boom, there it was, the security camera still frame. Her. Him. Kissing in front of his door before she stepped inside. No caption needed. I didn't react. Didn't yell. Didn't flip the table. I just kept staring at the still frame like it was a math equation I was solving. Dennis tapped the USB. Audio's on there. Her phone's been bugged for 2 weeks. That guy, goes by Dan, works in her office. Divorced. Drives a Lexus he can't afford. Wants to take her to Aruba. And buddy, he leaned forward. She's thinking about it. I exhaled. Not a sigh, just the release of pressure that comes from knowing. No more suspicion. No more doubt. Just facts. She know I know? I asked. Nope. She thinks you're still watching The Wire and worrying about your cholesterol. I nodded. That's when I made the call. Not a phone call. A mental one. A decision. The trap would be set. I would let her keep lying. Keep planning. Keep thinking she was smarter than me. Because when this ended, it wouldn't be a confrontation. It would be an execution. Financial, legal, and digital. And she wouldn't even see the first blow coming. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, I installed a walk-in freezer and hired a chef. The night I confirmed Joanna's betrayal, I didn't drink myself to sleep or cry into a throw pillow. I sat in my office, poured a single glass of scotch, opened a new spreadsheet, and labeled it Operation Homecoming. Petty revenge wasn't my aim. I didn't want drama. I wanted devastation, quiet, surgical, lawful devastation. The kind that left her wondering how the ground vanished beneath her feet while I walked away whistling. First step, lock it down. Within 48 hours, I created 3 new bank accounts, 2 under my name, 1 under an LLC I'd quietly formed a year ago for a side project that never launched. Just like that, most of our joint savings, legally half mine, migrated like winter geese into territory she couldn't reach. I left enough to keep up appearances, grocery runs, gas, the odd brunch swipe. But the heavy artillery? Gone. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and told herself she'd ask me about it later. Cheaters always think they're 10 steps ahead, but Joanna was playing poker with her cards facing me, upside down. I also changed the house Wi-Fi password. Not enough to raise red flags, just enough to force her to ask for it again. When she did, I gave her a new guest network with limited access and bandwidth throttled so bad she couldn't stream a cat video. Oh, she'd said, I think the Wi-Fi's been acting up. Yeah, weird, I replied. Maybe I'll look into it this weekend. She nodded and went back to texting Angela, aka Dan. I went back to planning her professional extinction. I met with my lawyer, Grace Weller, a woman with the warmth of a brick wall and the precision of a scalpel. She's the kind of attorney you don't want to meet in court unless she's sitting on your side of the table. Grace reviewed Dennis' file, listened to the recordings, and asked only one question. You want to go nuclear? I want her to need a financial advisor just to count how little she has left, I said. Grace grinned. We'll need to restructure some assets. Quietly. Then we let her walk into her own trap. I nodded. Just give me a checklist. And so, the asset fortification protocol began. I pulled out of the vacation home and put it under my LLC. Same with the boat we barely used, but she insisted we keep because it looks good on Instagram. Sold 3 of our mutual investments. Shifted my 401k contributions to a separate brokerage account under my name only. All legally sound. all invisible to someone who hadn't checked a financial dashboard since the Obama administration. Meanwhile, Dennis kept the updates coming. Apparently, Dan had been getting bold. He started showing up at our house when I was out of town on business. Translation: working from a coffee shop 10 minutes away with a long-lens camera set up on a tripod. Dan had the nerve to park in my driveway like he was auditioning for the role of husband number 2. Joanna even let him use my favorite coffee mug. That part got under my skin more than I care to admit. But I didn't flinch, because the real game wasn't about them anymore. It was about the moment I'd pressed the button. And that moment was coming. I had Dennis deliver a flash drive to Dan's ex-wife anonymously, containing just enough audio and screenshots to blow up whatever weekend custody agreement they had. That was the warm-up act. Dan vanished from our street 2 days later. Joanna claimed he had to go out of town for a project. I nodded. Tough break. Seemed like a nice guy. She smiled weakly, clearly testing the waters. Yeah, he's been helping me with some work stuff. Just, work friends. Sure, I said. Everyone needs a good work friend. I toasted her with my glass of red wine. She had no idea she was dining with the architect of her collapse. The beauty of betrayal is that cheaters never expect the faithful one to become the predator. They think we'll beg, cry, fall apart. They forget some of us were building the escape route while they were memorizing lies. 3 weeks before the hammer drop, I asked Joanna if she wanted to plan a trip. I was thinking maybe Aruba, I said deadpan. She blinked. Oh, that's random. You always said you wanted to go, I replied, sipping my wine. Her hands twitched slightly. She knew Dan had talked about Aruba. The walls were starting to whisper. But she said nothing. Good. That meant she still thought she had time. Thought the cracks in the ice weren't growing by the second. Then came the final step. I contacted IT at our home internet provider and had the router's admin settings changed. Kicked every connected device off except mine. No smart TV. No laptop. No Spotify speaker in the bathroom. Just a single bar of cell signal and the echo of what was coming. That night, Joanna tried to ask why her phone wouldn't connect to the Wi-Fi. I said. Probably a glitch. Try again tomorrow. She nodded, lips thin. Maybe she thought I was dumb. Maybe she was starting to realize I was just pretending to be. Either way, the storm was loaded. The pieces were in place. Evidence cataloged. Assets protected. Lawyer on standby. And Joanna? She was still smiling at me across the dinner table. Still lying. Still thinking this was her game. But in exactly 10 days, she'd wake up in a world that no longer belonged to her. Some wars are fought with bullets. Others are fought with silence. Mine began at 7:01 a.m. on a crisp, sunny Tuesday, when Joanna still thought she had a husband, a home, and a future. She was in the kitchen, stirring cream into her coffee, the same brand I'd been buying for the last 7 years. Vanilla hazelnut. Every morning she pretended not to like it. Said it was a little sweet. Drank it anyway. Probably the same way she tolerated me. She was scrolling her phone, no doubt checking messages from people who thought she was someone she wasn't. I watched her out of the corner of my eye while packing my bag for work. Truth was, I'd cleared my entire day. No meetings. No calls. Just one mission. The strike. She looked up. You're leaving early today? Yeah, I said, zipping the bag. Big day? Might be late, too. She smiled. I'll save you some dinner. It was adorable, in the way a spider web is, fragile, intricate, and meant for trapping things that don't know better. Thanks, I replied. Hey, don't forget the bank called. Something about verifying charges. You might want to give them a ring. That landed like a pebble on a frozen lake. The slightest ripple. Oh, she said casually. Too casually. Weird. I haven't used the card in days. I nodded. Yeah, strange. She sipped her coffee. I walked out the door. The moment I pulled away from the house, I texted Grace, my attorney. Green light. 5 minutes later, Joanna's access to our joint checking account was revoked. Not frozen, revoked. She was no longer a co-owner. It was now mine, and mine alone. Legal, surgical, irreversible. The savings account? Same fate. Gone. Credit cards? Shut down. I didn't cancel them. I reported them stolen. A clean break. Every digital trail she had that led to money disappeared. Then came the property lockout. I'd been working with a title lawyer for the past month. The house was in both our names, but the land it was built on. That was a separate title from when we remodeled. Guess whose name that was under? So when Joanna got home that night and tried to log into the county tax portal, She'd learn a fun new term, revocable land use restriction. It meant that the land was now tied up in a trust, and the trust, surprise, required unanimous consent for property use. Translation? She couldn't sell it, rent it, or even park her car in the driveway without me signing off. Oh, but the real kicker? I changed the Wi-Fi password again. This time, I didn't give her the new one. The blowback came at 6:47 p.m. I'd been waiting for it like a hunter in a blind. Joanna called. I didn't answer. Texted. Babe, I think something's wrong with the accounts. Can you check? I waited an hour, then replied. Talk to Grace. That's it. That's all she got. Grace called me right after. She's already called 3 times. Hysterical. Tell her I'll speak to her at the proper time. In the proper setting. Grace chuckled. You're ice cold. Thank you, I said. That's what I'm going for. I stayed at a hotel that night. Not out of fear. Just didn't want the noise. Joanna called 6 more times. Sent messages. Left voicemails with a trembling voice that was trying very hard to sound calm. I let them pile up like snow on the porch. The next morning, I walked back into the house at 8 a.m. sharp. She was standing in the kitchen, barefoot, in one of my old college t-shirts. No makeup. No mask. You need to explain what's going on, she said. I set my bag down slowly. Calm. Controlled. Do I? I said. Her eyes narrowed. Yes, you do. The cards aren't working. The bank says I've been removed from the accounts. I can't even pay for gas. I nodded. Must be a glitch. She blinked. A glitch. Yeah, I said, pulling up a chair. You know how sometimes things just stop working? She crossed her arms. Are you seriously going to play games right now? No games, I said. Just truths. She went quiet. That unsettled her more than yelling would have. What do you want? She asked. Want? I raised an eyebrow. Interesting question. What do I want? Well, I used to want a lot of things. A wife who didn't lie to my face. A home that wasn't built on secrets. A coffee mug that didn't get used by Dan. Her breath caught, and there it was, the first visible crack in the porcelain. Her face drained of color. You knew, she said. I know, I corrected. Present tense. She backed into the counter, gripping it like the room was moving. Listen, she said, trying to regain footing. It wasn't like that. You've been distant for months. Save it. I cut her off. There's a folder in the study. Has everything Grace will need. Evidence. Timeline. The works. She looked stunned. You were planning this? I smiled, cold and clean. I was engineering it. You can't just lock me out of my own life. Why not? I said. You left the door open first. She shook her head, still processing. You can't do this to me. Oh, Joanna, I said, standing slowly. You did this to you. I'm just making sure you feel it. She didn't respond. She just stood there, staring, silent. For the first time in what felt like years, I had her full attention. I walked upstairs, showered, changed, came down, coffee in hand, and paused at the door. You'll be hearing from Grace later today. We'll make it all official. You don't have to do this, she whispered. I opened the door. You're right, I said. But I want to. By noon, Joanna had already called Grace 4 times, each message more desperate than the last. Her confidence had cracked completely now. No more pretending this was all a mistake. She knew it wasn't. The papers were served that afternoon. Standard dissolution with a non-standard appendix, infidelity clause, asset forfeiture based on prenuptial agreement, and a detailed timeline of her affair, timestamped, recorded, and cataloged. She didn't argue. Not yet. She asked to talk in person. I agreed. One last meeting. Neutral ground. A coffee shop where everyone smiles politely and pretends not to eavesdrop on lives falling apart. She sat across from me, hands wrapped tightly around a cappuccino she hadn't touched. You set a trap, she said, finally. No, I replied. I set a boundary. You crossed it. She leaned forward. I made a mistake. That's not a mistake, I said. That's a campaign. Mistakes are singular. You ran a covert operation. Joanna swallowed hard. What happens now? You sign the agreement. You walk away with what's left. And you never contact me again. She blinked. What about the house? Read the appendix. Her lips pressed together. The car. It's in my name. Read the appendix. She stared at me. I gave you years of my life. And I gave you every opportunity not to waste them, I said. But you did anyway. Word spread fast. Joanna's friends, at least, The ones who hadn't already distanced themselves started disappearing. Turns out people are far less loyal when you've been outed as a fraud with a fancy haircut. Dan? He vanished. Turns out he had a girlfriend he never mentioned, and a fiancé before that. One of Joanna's colleagues told me she cried in the office bathroom for 20 minutes the day after the court papers were filed. I didn't smile when I heard it, but I won't lie, it gave me closure. Grace moved fast. We had a preliminary court hearing within a month. Joanna's lawyer tried to stall, tried to claim coercive control or unfair tactics. Grace shut it down with calm professionalism and a binder the size of a toaster oven. Joanna looked like a ghost in that courtroom. Pale. Hollow. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She didn't deny anything. The judge looked through the file, frowned, and said, "Well, this is thorough." By the end of the hearing, I had full control of the house, the accounts, and the assets. All she got was her car, a modest buyout, and a reminder of the consequences of treating your spouse like a placeholder. The day she moved out, I wasn't home. I left the key with a third-party moving crew, gave her 4 hours, and had the locks changed an hour after that. She texted, "I didn't deserve this." I replied, "You deserved better." So did I. You just didn't act like it. I had the house deep cleaned. Not out of spite, out of necessity. You ever try to live in a place where every room has a memory and half of them are lies? You start to feel like a tenant in your own life. The sheets went first, then the dishes, then the framed wedding photo we'd never taken down. I replaced everything slowly, deliberately, with items I chose for myself. For once, the house felt like mine. Peaceful, clean, quiet. A fresh start. Joanna moved into a one-bedroom rental across town. The kind of place with laminate countertops and a view of the parking lot. Dan never came back. Neither did her pride, from what I hear. She tried dating again, of course. Apps, parties, networking events. But her name had weight now. People knew. Not the intimate details, but the essence. She wasn't someone to trust. She was someone to avoid. She tried to text me once more. "I miss you." I deleted it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. There's a difference. Being angry means they still have power over you. Being done means they don't even get a reaction point. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Clean, swift, brutal in its efficiency. The judge signed the decree with a nod and said, "Let's hope you both find peace." I already had. I walked out of that courthouse lighter. Straighter. Like I'd been carrying a backpack full of bricks for 3 years and just realized I could put it down. People ask if I'm dating again. I'm not. Not because I'm broken, because I'm whole, and I want to stay that way a little longer. My revenge wasn't fire and fury. It wasn't public shaming or humiliation. It was silence, precision, and the complete removal of access. I didn't burn her world down. I just turned off the lights and walked away. And that, gentlemen, is how you reclaim your life without ever raising your voice. Well, that's the end of the story. If it made you think, caught you off guard, or just stuck with you for a minute, drop a comment. Let me know what hit hardest. Maybe you've been through something similar. Maybe you just enjoyed the twist. And if you want more stories like this, go ahead and subscribe. This is just the beginning. It only gets deeper from here. See you in the next one.